So after about 3 years of putting it off and saying I'll get around to it some other time, I finally got around to watching all 5 seasons of Breaking Bad. And my opinion is, and you might want to sit down, this is a pretty unpopular opinion, this is one of the greatest shows of all time. I know that's a pretty bold and out there take, you won't find many people who think the same way as I do, you know, very contrarian with that kind of thing. Okay, but for real though, Breaking Bad is an absolutely fantastic show, and one of my favourite parts of it is that there is not a single bad episode. Like, genuinely, I cannot name a single episode of Breaking Bad that I thought was genuinely bad. There are episodes that I kind of tuned out a bit during, particularly during the first season, but there is no episode I would consider to be anything less than at least good. So I figured now I have such an incredible show under my belt, I figured I really want to talk about it while it's still fresh on my mind. So I figured a pretty good way of going about this would be to rank the seasons of Breaking Bad, from worst to best. The 5th spot on the list obviously being the worst, and the 1st spot on the list being the best. And before we get into this, keep in mind, there is not a single bad season of this show, just like how there's not a single bad episode. All of these seasons are just absolutely great pieces of television, and I really enjoyed my time with all of them. So when seasons on this list will be in the worst category, when I say worst on this list, I pretty much just mean it's the worst in comparison to the other seasons. All of these are great pieces of TV. Okay, with that out of the way, if you end up enjoying this video, leave a like, and let's get into my ranking. So in the bottom spot of this list, we have Breaking Bad Season 1. Now, Season 1 I think has a lot going for it. It does a lot of the big groundwork at establishing all of the major characters, plots, and themes of the show. Breaking Bad Season 1 does an excellent job at getting you instantly hooked on the series and setting up a groundwork for what the future of the show will look like. What I particularly liked about this season is the formation of Walt and Jesse's partnership. I think these two characters bounce off of each other excellently, and they have brilliant chemistry. I particularly like how bitter Jesse is that Walt flunked him in chemistry. I also really like how both Walt and Jesse slowly learn each other's side of the trade. For example, Walt gets more of an understanding of how the drug dealing side of things works, and Jesse gets more of an understanding of how the chemistry side of things work. They both learn from each other, which I think is really cool. The main thing about this season for me, and the reason that it isn't higher, is episodes 4 through 6. Now, these are solid episodes, I think. They do very necessary work in setting up the plot of Season 1 and the plot of the rest of the entire show. And they have some very good individual scenes, like, say, the bit where Walt blows up the guy's car, all of Walt kind of grappling with the cancer diagnosis. The talking pillow scene is a really big standout. But, I don't know, these 3 episodes kind of just blurred together for me. Like, as far as Breaking Bad episodes go, I really wasn't into these ones. And I think it was probably on the sole basis that I just really wanted to see Walt and Jesse cook again. Like, they're good episodes, they do necessary work in contributing to the story, but I was really just sitting and waiting for Walt and Jesse to link up again. So in episode 7, when they finally start doing stuff again, I was just over the moon. I think episode 7 of Breaking Bad Season 1 is really, really great, with the obvious standout being the scene where Walter blows up Tuco's office.
This is not meth.
Breaking Bad Season 1 gets a little too slow for me at points, but all in all it's a very entertaining ride, and does an excellent job at introducing us to some of the world and characters of this fantastic show. Despite all of this season's shortcomings, I think it emerges as a really strong piece of television. Okay, from what I've seen of the Breaking Bad discourse on the internet, I'm pretty sure this opinion is going to be pretty controversial, but my second to least favourite Breaking Bad season is Season 3. Breaking Bad Season 3 is such a mixed bag for me, because on paper, all the individual episodes are great, but when it comes to the actual season, they kind of just, not blended together, but I don't know, they didn't leave as much of an impression on me as like a full product as the other seasons on this list did. Like all of Breaking Bad, the season has a fantastic plot and really good individual episodes and moments, but I don't feel like it meshed together as well for me in the same way that seasons 2, 4, and 5 did. However, I did say that I think the individual moments and episodes of the season are great, so I want to get into some of the stuff I like now. One of my favourite scenes in the entire show is that right after Walt indirectly caused one of the worst American airplane tragedies since 9/11 in the prior season, he goes on a stage and basically just justifying it to himself, saying stuff like, well, only 165 people died, there could have been 700 people in the crash, and other stuff like that. The scene is just so painfully cringe, seeing Walter being like such like a jerk ass in front of so many people, and it's really awesome. Like, it's cringe in a good way. You occasionally have these moments in Breaking Bad where you just sit back and think, wow, Walter is such a dick, and this is one of them. Another standout to me is the ever so divisive Fly episode. I'm one of the people who really love the episode. I really like when Breaking Bad does bottle episodes just between Walter and Jesse because the two characters have like such great chemistry between each other, like I said before. So whenever we see bottle episodes that just focus on these two characters talking, I'm always such a big fan of them. Another standout thing in this season is Hank and Jesse. These two characters are really good throughout the entire show, but season 3 does such excellent work at expanding the scope of these two characters. Particular standouts for me is I love the introduction of Andrea and Brock, who become huge parts of the show later on. And Hank in this season is seriously fantastic. Throughout the entire show, I kind of didn't like Hank up to that point. I know that was kind of the point. But the scene where Hank beats the ever-living crap out of Jesse and then doesn't lie about it at all and owns up to being wrong, I think really made the character a lot more likable for me and made me actually be rooting for him in the later seasons of the show. Season 3 of Breaking Bad really gives you a sense that Hank actually cares about this job beyond the idea of, oh, I just need to bust people and make funny jokes. Like, Hank is someone who genuinely has a very, clear sense of right and wrong, and that kind of moral, fiber makes me really root for him in the later seasons. I also really enjoy how Season 3 builds on all of Walt's relationships with the other characters, like, say, with Jesse, and with Gus, and with Skyler. I think Walt bounces off of all of these characters, and all of the new characters that were introduced at the end of Season 2, such as Gus and Mike and stuff, excellently, and it's just really entertaining to watch. Season 3, I think, is a bit of a mixed bag, but most of my issues come down to me just not feeling it, rather than any, real flaws of the season. Breaking Bad Season 2 comes in at the 3rd spot of this list, and Breaking Bad Season 2 is incredible. I love this season of TV so much. Where do I even begin with this? First of all, my main issue with Season 1 is that it kind of got a bit boring at points. Like, I wanted Walt and Jesse to just link up already, and this season fixes that issue big style. What I love about Breaking Bad Season 2 is that there's never a dull moment. If Walt and Jesse aren't freaking out for their lives while being stuck in some drug lord's lounge, Jesse is watching in horror as some crackhead smashes her husband's head in with an ATM. The season is completely wild and just throws more and more stuff at you, and it's so entertaining. Not to mention, the character work is fantastic and it builds off of Season 1 excellently. A standout moment for me is when Walt realizes he's going to pull through cancer for a lot longer than he thought he would, which causes him to freak out because he kind of banked his whole descent into crime on the idea that he was going to die. So seeing that he realizes that he's going to live and be stuck with what he's done, I think is really heartbreaking. Another standout pretty much as always for me is Jesse Pinkman. Jesse and Jane's relationship in this season is fantastic, and where it heads at the end is really, really sad. And the only reason it hits so hard is because of how much work they did at fleshing out this relationship. The season does a really good job at making you care about these two drug addicts and makes you really want to see them manage to pull through and be okay. So when the inevitability comes around that Jane overdoses in Jesse's bed, it is so soul-crushing. What's especially sad about this plot beat is seeing how it just completely destroys Jesse emotionally afterwards. This guy is usually so full of life and peppy and charismatic, so seeing him just so utterly soul-crushed is really sad. Another huge standout for me about Season 2 is all of the new characters it introduces. This season does all of the legwork in introducing the big Breaking Bad characters. You got Saul Goodman, you've got Gus Fring, you've got Mike Ehrmantraut. These are hands down some of the best characters in Breaking Bad, and they're all so good that they got a spin-off show in the form of Better Call Saul, which I'm 6 episodes into so far and I'm loving. But yeah, the new characters introduced in Breaking Bad Season 2 are just fantastic and I love all of them. Also, this can be said for pretty much every season of Breaking Bad and El Camino, but Jesse's friends just continue to be the GOATs. These guys are the unsung heroes of Breaking Bad. However, what I will give to the people that think Season 2 is the worst season is that Season 2 does have this scene.
Happy birthday to you.
And at the number 2 spot on this list is Breaking Bad Season 5, which is just an absolutely incredible piece of television. What is there to say about this season that hasn't been said to death already? For a start, the final 3 episodes, Ozymandias, Granite State, and Felina, are just perfect pieces of television, and they are probably the best TV episodes of all time. I love just seeing Walt finally fall from grace over the course of the season, slowly pushing away more and more of his allies and friends and just becoming more alone, and then getting to the point where his operation blows up in his face, Hank gets his brains blown out and Walt's just forced to go on the run. Seeing the 5 seasons of lies Walt feeds to his family finally blow up in his face and have the truth come out is so satisfying, and a particular moment of satisfaction is when Walter Jr. finally realizes what his dad is and stands up to him. Although that satisfaction is kind of moot because Ozymandias in particular is hands down the saddest episode of the entire series. Seeing Walt's family fall apart is really upsetting, and then there's obviously the Hank death scene. Man. Another great thing about season 5 is that Jesse Pinkman continues to be the best character in the show. It does a really good job at making you just feel absolutely horrible for the dude. I think the two standouts of this in the season is watching the poor guy just have his guilt completely destroy him over the course of the season, and his whole imprisonment at the hands of Todd and the Nazi biker guys. It is absolutely devastating to see Jesse have to watch helplessly as Andrea is killed. I think the biggest strength of season 5 is that it just does such a great job at making you feel bad for everyone on screen. When I think back on this season, my first thoughts are, oh my god, I feel so bad for Mike, or I feel so bad for Hank, he didn't deserve to go out like that, or Jesse Pinkman got it so rough in this season. And in my opinion, all of the darkness in this season makes the final episode of the season and series for Lena all the more satisfying. After months of Jesse being enslaved and tortured by Todd and his bikers, seeing Jesse choke out Todd is such a cathartic moment, and I was cheering the whole way through. I hate Todd so much. And then seeing Walt shoot Jack in the face midway through sentence, just like Jack did to Hank, is so satisfying. Felina is hands down the best ending to any show I've ever seen, and it does such a good job at satisfyingly wrapping up all of the plot points in the season. Not only that, and I feel like I kind of glossed over this a little, the first half of the season is so good. Mike, Walt, and Jesse's partnership at the start of the season is really entertaining to watch because, like pretty much every character duo in Breaking Bad or dynamic, they bounce off of each other really well. The dialogue writing in this show is fantastic, so you can pair up pretty much any two characters and their interactions will be very entertaining. It helps that Mike is also just such a great character, and I was actually so pissed at Walt when he died. Shooting Mike to death in cold blood just because he called Walt big-headed is hands down one of the pettiest things Walt was ever done in the series. And it also really shows how far he's come, or rather how low he's stooped. At the start of the series, killing wasn't even in the question, and when it did happen, it was something that really traumatized Walt. Now, the guy is literally just capping people because they said he had a big head. And speaking of Walt killing, that scene where all of Mike's contacts get killed by Walt's guys is genuinely so chilling. Excellent scene. I think we should move on to the next point now, because if I just keep talking about this season, this video will be like 5 years long. So let's move on to the best season of Breaking Bad. And the best season of Breaking Bad is BoJack Horseman Christmas Special, Sabrina's Christmas Wish. No, it's season 4. Breaking Bad season 4 is absolutely fantastic and is, in my opinion, the best season of Breaking Bad. There is so much absolutely fantastic stuff to like about this season, but for the sake of time, I'm only going to discuss one of them in detail. That one thing isn't the excellent character work done for Jesse Pinkman fleshing out his already amazing relationship with Andrea, giving him a dynamic with Mike which pulls him out of addiction and depression a bit and makes him a more well-rounded person overall. It's not the absolutely excellent on-screen presence that characters like Saul and Mike bring to the show, really lightening up the mood, or in the case of Mike, being really cool. It's not that absolutely fantastic deepening of Walt and Skyler's relationship, having Skyler begin to sink down to Walt's level a bit out of fear. It's not that absolutely god-tier scene where Walter buys Bogdan's car wash and then spends his first dollar on a Coke. It's not the insanely satisfying but also super tense moments of Hank finally getting back on the Heisenberg case after being disabled for a full season. Everything Breaking Bad season 4 does is absolutely fantastic, but the best thing it has to offer is Gustavo Fring and his dynamic with Walt. This was all already introduced and built upon in seasons 2 and 3 and was really damn good in those seasons, but season 4 just takes it to another level. The first thing I really like is how Gus has eyes everywhere. Pretty much wherever Walt goes, he's always being watched by Gus, and it gives Gus this really intimidating overarching presence throughout the season. You feel Walt's paranoia throughout the entire thing because you know he's watching nearly 24/7 and you know at any minute things could go absolutely horrible for Walt. If Gus doesn't have some 24/7 camera that streams everything Walt does directly to his laptop, he'd have Mike in some alley watching him. The calm and friendly facade Gus puts on throughout the show is now even scarier in season 4 because season 4 starts with him just snapping and killing some dude. Not to mention, the backstory Gus and Hector share is fantastic, and I was not expecting to feel any kind of sympathy for Gus Fring when I went into season 4, but I was very surprised. The season does a really good job at making you empathize with Gus for what happened with Hector, and it makes those moments where Gus does take revenge on Hector, like the moment where he rubs in his face the fact that the Salamanca family will die with him, actually very cathartic, despite the fact that what Gus is doing is like unquestionably really evil. And then seeing Walt utilize this as Gus's Achilles heel was so satisfying. That final scene where Gus gets blown up and then walks out with his face half ripped off is just so good. Breaking Bad season 4 was already going to be a slam dunk, but the basically season-long chess game between Walt and Gus was just so fantastic that it elevates it for me even more. I love season 4 to death. So yeah, that is my ranking of all 5 seasons of Breaking Bad. And again, let me say, I don't think any of the seasons on this list were bad, so say season 3, I don't think it's a bad season, I just don't like it as much in comparison to the others. All 5 of these seasons are absolutely fantastic pieces of TV. What do you think though? Be sure to let me know how wrong or right I am in the comments down below, and if you like TV discussion videos like this, be sure to subscribe. Okay, with that like begging out of the way, I kind of don't know how to end this video, so, finger.